I'm going to show you guys my process for how I made these snares. So this is my sound design session, and the first thing I went ahead and started out with was a sine wave inside of faceplant. I added a frequency shifter, a convolver, distorted it a whole bunch, and then I put a high pass filter at the end of all of the effects. So yeah, there's nothing really too fancy going on here. It's just a simple sine wave with just some effects inside of faceplant. And then once I was done processing the sine wave, I went ahead and inserted it into a separate audio track. And so this is the sine wave from that faceplant. I'm just gonna play it back for you guys really quickly. Probably won't be able to hear it as much because it's at negative 15 decibels, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn that up really quickly. So yeah, it just sounds, honestly, that kind of sounds like, you know, you're like entering an elevator. Oh my gosh. It's like beep. What is going on? Alright, so then I lowered it down to negative 15 decibels, just so it wasn't too loud. And so yeah, I figured that'd be a nice layer to add to our faceplant snare up here. For the snare, I actually used a preset that I created in a previous video. I'll go ahead and leave the link to the video in the description, so if you want to go ahead and check that out, you can. But yeah, this is the preset, the Pryda snare, and it sounds like this. So yeah, I pretty much freeze and flatten this faceplant preset, and I put it in the group with the layered sine wave. And together it sounds like this. Without the sine wave, it sounds like this. So just the regular Pryda snare with a fade on the audio track. And then with the snap heap audio effects added inside of the group, it sounds like this. And I did some automation with a frequency shifter. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what all I added inside of this snap heap. And so inside of this snap heap, actually I'm going to delete this LFO, it's not really doing anything. And so inside of this snap heap, I added a slice EQ, a frequency shifter, another frequency shifter, a shaper, and a dynamics to compress the whole signal. And so for this first frequency shifter, this is the one that's doing automation, so I right click, hit assign to automatic slot, and so as you can see, it's already assigned to a slot, so that way I can then automate this inside of Ableton. So once I hit configure, I just clicked on the frequency shifter and it shows up right here. And so I'm going to go ahead and re-enable that automation because I was working on a snare earlier before I decided I was going to record. I'm going to lower this down just because it's a little bit loud. And so yeah, I really like the resonance of this snare. So when I added this slice EQ, I went ahead and made a very resonant peak and just kind of swept the frequency spectrum of our snare and then chose a random frequency that I really like that resonated. And so this peak filter is at around 774 hertz. And then like I said before, this frequency shifter is doing the automation. And then I added another frequency shifter and just pitched it down. And then for the shaper, I really wanted to distort the signal. So I turned the input drive here up by 8. And then I turned the mix to 58%. And then for the dynamics, I just wanted to compress the signal to kind of bring it closer together in volume. And so yeah, that is pretty much all that's inside of this snap heap. I'm going to show you this automation, and this is what the frequency shifter automation looks like. And so yeah, I was pretty much able to get different timbres by just messing around with the frequency shifter. And so this sounds like this, and then if I mess around with it even more, it was very drastic, so I had to make the group a little bit larger and make tinier adjustments here. But yeah, it was just fun to mess around with and get different sounds. And then this was just something fun that I kind of didn't really realize until I was like messing around even more with the snare. But this second snare that I recorded from the group kind of sounds like a tear-out snare. And then I remembered like, oh wait, I think tear-out basses or like tear-out sounds are made with snares. So I realized I think this would make like a cool tear-out loop. And so I went ahead and took this snare sample and put it inside of another group in here and made this kind of loop with it. I did have some effects on it, but I didn't really like the way it sounded. I just liked the original snare recording. So I made this kind of loop. So yeah, if you're ever wondering how to make a tear-out bass with your snares, just grab a Pryda snare, add a bunch of distortion, layer it, and automate it with a frequency shifter, and you can get some pretty cool tear-out samples. So yeah, that's my process for making these pots and pan styled snares, and also, I guess, tear-out bass, which is pretty cool too. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.